right. We are live. Let's see if we've got any attendees here. All right. Welcome, Kathy. Thanks for joining us. Let's see what else we got here. Janelle, thanks for coming. So we will get started in just a couple minutes, but let's wait for a few others to join here. As you're aware, we're talking about 5 no-fail steps to target account selection. This is a fireside chat, so it's going to be pretty informal. Chris and James are just going to chat about these 5 steps, some pro tips, and some good real-world examples. So we're just going to give it a couple more minutes. Feel free to put in the chat where you're calling in from. We like to see where everybody is based out of. Welcome, Mike, Annette. Okay, let's see. Couple more minutes. I hope everybody is recovering from Thanksgiving and all the food and family time. I know it's probably a lot. So we're starting off the week with a webinar to get you back into the swing of things. I should say fireside chat. Like I said, this is going to be pretty informal, just a 30-minute chat to help you navigate target account selection. It's one of the most critical aspects of account-based, and it's easy to get wrong, especially when you're working closely with sales. So with that, I'm seeing some more folks in here. So let's go ahead and get started in the interest of time. So yes, today we're talking about the 5 no-fail steps to target account selection. And our agenda today is, first I'll introduce Chris and James. Then we'll do a quick level set on account-based programs and then get into those steps. And then if y'all have questions, we'll answer those at the end. Feel free to put those in the Q&A box. You should see that on your console. Enter those in at any time and we'll address them right then and there, or at the end if it fits there as well. So my name's Brittany Guidetti. I'm the Senior Growth Marketing Manager at Intelligent Demand. And with me today, I have James, who's the Senior Director of Integrated Growth Strategy at ID. And then Chris Moody from Toco, which is now Gartner. I have to make sure I add that parentheses portion in there. So yeah, with that, I see your question, Kathy. A recording will be provided. Yeah, so we'll send that out in the next couple of days after the event. But with that, I'm going to pass it off to Chris.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. I totally feel the Thanksgiving comments. Brittany, I debated if I was going to heat up leftovers once again for lunch, and I picked a safer option today. So I will not be in a food coma for this event, this fireside chat. But James and I have a bunch of things we want to talk through. We've simplified this into 5 steps, but the first thing we really need to cover is a simplified account-based process. So really, if we put this into 3 steps, so just 3 steps to talk about account-based, we know that there's infinitely more that we could do. We could take each one of these steps and break it out into 10, 15, 20 things. We have very structured ways that we view the world of account-based, and James will give some great examples throughout the process. But first, we talk about the target account list. We have to have a list of accounts that we're going to pursue. Some organizations, this is just handed to marketing from sales. Most of the time, I think all of us would say we should be working together to develop that. So it may be very specific. It could be really straightforward, like the example, a list of billion-dollar tier 1 manufacturers. That's a pretty broad list, not extremely targeted, but we have to have a list of accounts to start account-based strategy and account-based marketing. Then we score those accounts by engageability. So those may be accounts that have searched for a competitive term. It may be accounts that have visited our website, but we have some notion of prioritization of the list. And then we move into orchestration, which is pulling together all of the workflows, all of the channels and tactics we're going to use. It's aligning marketing, sales development, and sales. Again, this is the 50,000, not even 30,000 foot view. This is the 50,000 foot view of a simplified account-based process. James, I'm sure that you go really deep on this with tons of different clients, but any commentary you want to add here just about the easy version?
No, I think this breaks it down really, really simply, Chris. And I think, a lot of times, and again, I'm glad to be here and having this chat with you, but the target account list development is such a crucial step in the process of making sure that you've got, the right accounts that are going to set you up for success to hit your goals. We see quite often, as an account-based program moves on, a lot of folks will then look back and say, was it successful? Is this program successful? And a lot of that really falls on the accounts that you've chosen. So again, looking forward to having this discussion with you today.
Yeah, thanks. I love that too. I mean, with the wrong list, it doesn't matter what we do, right? If we're going after the wrong accounts, then the best orchestration in the world is not going to be as successful or as fruitful, which connects to our first step. I mean, we'll highlight this. We have 5 steps. So think of this as all the steps required to roast this marshmallow here. We didn't cover that, James. We didn't rehearse that, but I'm sure we could come up with 5 steps of starting a fire, getting around it, roasting marshmallows, making a s'more, whatever we want to do there. But really, the thing that I love about this and the structure we've put together, 5 steps. That's easy to remember. So this is the most important aspect. If we pick the wrong accounts, we are bound to fail. Now, maybe not as extreme. We can still find some success. But with the guidance today and only 30 minutes for the low price of, $9.95 in 4 monthly installments, right? You can use this tomorrow. You can use this tomorrow to start to select your accounts. And the first thing we have to do, we have to start with business goals. This is a personal pet peeve of mine. James and I have spent a bunch of time talking about this, but if we don't have our top business goals, the objectives the whole company cares about, it's very difficult for us to figure out how we show success in the world and prove that marketing matters, and more specifically, account-based marketing matters. Because without those business goals, we can't figure out how we're going to use account-based to be successful. We can't figure out what does growth look like. I've seen this in a ton of organizations. I know James has a great story here, but I've seen organizations where they only care about net new accounts and net new logos, but sales hits their number from cross-sell, upsell, and retention. So that's disconnected if we're not aligning the entire organization to the right goals. And this does feed into the ideal client or ideal customer profile, the ICP, which helps us with target account selection. But James, you shared a great story with me here about business goals and the importance.
Yeah. And going back and starting with business goals is so important because we get, at ID being a revenue growth agency, we get and specializing in ABM, we get a lot of clients that come to us and want to do ABM. And one of the questions we always have to kind of start with is, well, why? How can ABM help you achieve those goals? How do you want to grow? Now, everyone, the end game is always revenue, right? You always want to be driving revenue, but how are you going to drive that revenue? And what are those realistic expectations for that revenue? And, all of this is sort of, I think, the, maybe the thing that is really the guidelines is that, no organization has an unlimited budget to throw at something like this. I know we're gonna talk about that in our next step, but you have to make decisions, and those decisions are going to guide how these programs are orchestrated and how they're run and how successful they are and what that measure is. So, in the example that you mentioned, Chris, a recent client who's a software provider, a global company, really knew that they needed some growth, and they needed some growth from a particular set of accounts. And those happen to be net new logos that fell within what they would call their strategic accounts list. And as we dug deep and we talked to them, the goal really became what we sort of coined as breakthrough. We have these accounts that could potentially have a very big impact on our revenue. We're really having trouble getting their attention. We're really having trouble getting those meetings and breaking through with them. And so once we sat down and we looked at some of those parameters and we said, okay, 12 months from now, 18 months from now, when we look back and judge, was this program successful? What are the things we want to check off from that business goal standpoint? And so, in that example, it really became acquisition. We want to get meetings, we want to get introductions and in front of these key strategic accounts and start those conversations. And so that's where we focused, and that's where the whole ABM project for them really kicked off.
I love that. And for each step, we've curated a pro tip. So this could be your tweetable slide. This could be your screenshot slide. You will get the recording, as Brittany said. But one thing that we love to flag here when we're talking about starting with business goals and early account selection, every selected account should have the same next step. That means that we built an amazing segment. Now, there's variability. There are exceptions to the rule. But James, I know you covered one with me. What's your favorite next step for a small list of accounts?
Yeah, for a small list of accounts, I mean, to me, it's a meeting, especially in ABM. We're really working to surround these targets with a message that hits them at different points of their journey or the funnel. But a lot of times I see ABM be very, very successful at standing out. We're making a concerted effort. We're using personalized tactics, jumping off the page, breaking out of the clutter that a lot of the competition plays in, getting on their radar and getting that meeting. That's one that I really love as a first step.
Love that. I'll say, as the analyst on this particular meeting, one thing that we see a ton, everyone struggles to find the first measure of success with account base. Booking meetings, creating engagement, that's a great first thing to do. And engagement should mean taking a meeting with us, not clicking an ad, opening an email. So I love that. I think that's really important. Big takeaway there. We're trying to book meetings when we do this. So that's the note to every single person listening to this. So our second step, this is a really important one. I would say many organizations forget to do this, and they build their expectations and plans and goals without determining a firm budget. But this guides everything that we are able to do. Right? We may say, hey, we're trying to close the biggest 10 accounts in the world. We want to do a Super Bowl ad. If we don't have budget to do a Super Bowl ad to create that awareness, get those eyeballs, why are we even considering that? But we do see this a lot where folks will build a plan without considering what can we actually do? What's our spend per account? But this is a huge thing for us to keep in mind here because many things that we do in account-based are not highly scalable, which is why we have to prioritize accounts. But we have to figure out how our budget is going to facilitate the decision-making process. And again, James is kind of our Sherpa with great examples here, but I know you've got an awesome budget example.
Yeah, and a lot of organizations, again, when they embark on their first ABM program or journey, it's often viewed, as a pilot, and a lot of times they struggle. How much should this cost? And obviously they can, go and look up benchmarks, right? Look up benchmarks from Topo and Gartner. They can take some industry polling as well. The problem with that is that these benchmarks vary a lot, depending on what industry you're in, depending on what type of motion that you're going to use, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many, it can sort of wildly vary there. So I always recommend that, you start with a budget. What can you invest in this? What are you comfortable investing in this? And that really helps guide those decisions that you mentioned, Chris. I mean, again, we'd all love to have an unlimited budget. We'd all love to be able to do highly personalized one-to-one ads to every account that matters to us. But, given the realities of, again, time and money, that's not going to be possible. So budget is a great way to sit down and have an honest conversation about, hey, how much can we afford? How many of these accounts can we go after? And then how can we go after them? Can we afford to go after them in a one-to-one motion? Or do we need to start lumping them together in different clumps and looking for efficiencies? And so once you align there, I think that also really sets a really strong foundation to look ahead to your ROI projections and calculations. So, for instance, if let's say, and I had this come up where, we were able to afford 10 one-to-one personalized accounts. Now, we knew about those 10 accounts. We knew what we anticipated sort of the average value of those deals to be. And then we were able to set an ROI goal based on some benchmark rates and close rates. And so that just kind of helped align the entire organization from leadership all the way down on what are we able to do and what are the expectations or results as we go forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It fits with our pro tip too. I coach Little League basketball and baseball, and everything is fair. When I coach, like every kid gets the same amount of playing time. Everyone gets a trophy. I believe in that. I'm not one that's like, oh, only the winners get trophies. But account-based is not fair inherently. James just hit on this. If we have 10 accounts that we can treat one-to-one, then that means they are more special. Our A account should get our A players. Our A account should get our top spend. Our A account should get our most intensive high-value offers and everything that we can do. That is literally the name of the game with account base. So that's one thing that James and I would love to flag and make sure that you remember before you jump to the next step. We do prioritize our accounts for a reason. The most important account should have a disproportionate share of time and attention that we give them to try to get the bigger deals, the higher retention, the higher ACV, whatever the case may be. But really important thing to keep in mind there, which, James, I think you already hit on this one. So if it's cool with you, I'm going to jump ahead to the next step.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. And you started to allude to this as well. Beautiful segue. Yeah. But our third step, we're looking for efficiencies. So when we have budget, we have our list of accounts, then we start to find ways that we can maximize the impact of the money that we have as we think about how we're going to orchestrate this and what tactics we're going to do. This is where we start to structure our target account list, and it narrows the number of accounts that we can actually go after with our budget. Now, there are a lot of different criteria that we could use here. We have some listed: industries, use cases, personas, life cycle, geography. But essentially, in an extreme example, which I know James is going to give us an example, but if we could only pursue 30 accounts, I would urge you to say we should be going after the 30 most important accounts, not 30 that we randomly picked on a map. So, James, talk about how you've been helping students with this one.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of in the example that I've been talking about here, where we landed after step 2 on budget, we realized in this program we could afford about 10 one-to-one accounts, but we could also afford almost 90 one-to-few accounts that would be grouped together. So as we looked at that, we said, well, how can we maximize our budget towards these accounts? And I love these bullets that we have here. These are all things that we considered. We said, well, how many personas can we target? Because, as you know, adding a persona doubles the effort and then triples the efforts, because you have to create emails by persona, you have to create ads by persona, you have to create landing page environments and content by persona. So these are all things that you can start to see they have a way of getting away from you. But in this example, we really keyed on a couple of industries that this client was doing really well in. They had gotten some traction, they had closed some deals, and they said, there's these 2 industries that are really high priority for us, which was great, because it allows us to create messaging, create and work content around these industries. So in that one-to-few 90 account example, it could still feel personalized. We were speaking to their industry. We were speaking to something that they cared about in that industry and their persona. And we didn't have to worry about trying to create new messaging for, again, 6 or 7 different industries, which would have eaten budget up, as you know. The other piece of it, again, is looking for ways. I'm sure everyone on this presentation here has an example of a piece of content that they show to everyone, and things like industry, things like geography are a great way of personalizing that a little bit more and narrowing your focus, so you can, again, give them that, even if it's not a one-to-one feel, it can feel more like a one-to-one feel.
Love that. See, you already know the pro tip, James. Perfect. With the examples. And that's the thing, right? Like, we're going to jump in. We are sensitive to your very valuable 30 minutes, and we are going to hit the mark. We have 2 more steps. But remember, we have done this for years as marketers with content. This is the exact same thing. The dirty secret, like, we can keep it amongst ourselves as marketers and friends. It can feel one-to-one without being one-to-one. So find ways that we can replicate, scale, make this applicable to more audiences. It doesn't have to be entirely net new. All right, step 4. This is one of my favorites. I'm going to actually ignore every single thing that's on the slide because you can all read, you can take a screenshot, but we're talking about collaboration. And we spend a bunch of time bridging gaps between marketers and sellers and marketing leaders and sales leaders. So James, give us some great examples of how marketing and sales should work together in account-based strategy.
Yeah, and kind of keeping this example going with the things that this particular client did that I thought was great was they independently tasked sales and marketing ops with developing a list. Have marketing pull their top lists, again, using things like scoring, engagement, have sales pull their lists of, man, I would really love to talk to this company. And then we brought those lists together and we started matching them up against each other. And where we had alignment, great, that account is definitely in. Where maybe we didn't have one or we had differing ones, we had a conversation about it. Why this one over that one? Which one would be more productive for us? And so that methodology worked really, really well in helping sales and marketing really have those conversations and align on which list and combined list that they could agree on.
That's beautiful. That's the tension we want, right? Like, that is literally the friction we want to create between marketing and sales. Like, we want there to be a reason for why they chose those accounts. Then let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's most important. That helps versus the blank sheet of paper. Call it the blinking cursor of death, right? Like, if you just say, hey, go tell us your key attributes. So one other way to think about alignment here with the pro tip that we're pulling, if we stretch our metrics that are important to us deeper into the funnel, so pipeline and opportunities to be specific, that forces us to be more aligned. That doesn't matter if it's demand gen or account-based. If we take 1 or 2 clicks deeper in the funnel and we start to pay attention to that, it will make us collaborate better with sales and make sales care more about creating engagement. So I think that was another pro tip we wanted to stress here, which gives us plenty of time to cover the last but not least step, which is another super important one. This is taking the data that we have and using it to match and refine our contact list. I feel like every marketer in existence struggles with data integrity, like what should we append, what should we care about, how do we switch from focusing on contacts to accounts, which is really a group of contacts. But I know that you all at Intelligent Demand have done a lot of work here thinking about how you can improve data to make an even better contact list to pursue. So could you give us a great example of this?
Yeah, and this is one that tends to be really eye-opening, I think, for our clients, because you do all this work and you get these target account lists and you feel good about the accounts that you have chosen. And then you start to go in and do data matching and you start to build that contact list. And one of the things that was kind of eye-opening for us with this program I've been talking about was that we had some accounts come back with 80 or more contacts that were marketable and available for us that we could target. We had others that came back with 2, 3, or even only 4 contacts. And so then you kind of, went back and started to reevaluate a little bit, which was like, okay, we do want this account in there, but we're going to have to trim this down. We can only probably afford to reach maybe a dozen of these people. So let's prioritize who those people are. Similarly, we had to make some tough decisions around, an account that we feel like should be a really good account, but is it going to be worth it if we're only potentially targeting 2 or 3 people? Can we achieve scale against that as far as delivery is concerned with our emails, with our media? So that was another piece of that puzzle that really, again, helped us refine that target account list, pulled some accounts out and said, you know what, maybe this one isn't right for this ABM program given this list. And we found other accounts that were more suitable. But, that contact data, again, as we get into, as everyone here I'm sure is very familiar with, especially when it comes to the new privacy laws and GDPR, et cetera, really working on that contact list is an important step and not to be overlooked.
Yeah, I would double click that. Like, it's extremely important. And, one other thing we want to stress, which I would love to get your thoughts on this one too, James. And then I did see some questions pop up, so we'll hit them really quick. But layering on intent data and pulling in intent signals can help us distinguish who's in the market to buy now, which is kind of supplemental data to everything we just talked about. So could you talk about how intent's working for some of your clients?
Yeah, definitely. And we work with a bunch of different, media partners as well as, native systems. A lot of our clients will leverage things like a demand-based system, a terminus system, a 6 Sense system. And those all provide great intent data. So you can see what they're in the market for, what they're searching for. We can use pixel data in order to track, have they specifically been on our site? And that will give you that sense, again, as you build the list, and more importantly, as you refine the list going forward, to see who's active. Obviously, as you build your reports, you can see the engagement, you can see all of the different, trackable actions that are taken throughout a campaign. But when you start layering on that intent, it often uncovers accounts that maybe didn't look as active with the campaign, but they are in the market, they are searching. And so that's a real opportunity, especially when it comes to sales and SDR teams, of feeding them that information and getting that feedback loop for them, which is, hey, we're seeing a lot of positive activity from this one account. What do you think? Should we prioritize? Should we try to find other ways or other offers to reach them? Those are all really healthy conversations to have throughout the program.
Outstanding. So we did it. 5 steps, 127, 1127, no matter what time zone you're in, those are our 2 time zones. But, I did see questions pop up. Brittany, I think we have time for one question. If you want to pick your favorite of all the questions that have come in so far, and I know that you all will work on answering the others too.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions we got was, James, you mentioned, knowing how much it costs for to effectively reach and engage each account, so that you can effectively decide how many accounts to go after based on the budget that you have. How do you determine what that cost is to target and engage each account? Like, what data do you rely on, and where can you find that?
Yeah, so a couple different things. So obviously, as I mentioned, there are some broad benchmarks out there for ABM campaigns. And again, depending on if you're doing one-to-one or one-to-few, those are pretty easy to find. I know, again, Topo Gartner provides those as well, industry blended averages. But also, really looking at media availability. So that part of that can come in an initial media planning process, where your media teams look at different channels and what they might be able to spend against that to reach those target accounts. And also looking at previous campaigns. And so, I always say the best benchmark to look at is what are your demand gen campaigns doing? That is sort of the baseline to say, is ABM performing better? We obviously hope so, but again, it's always looking back at what you've done, the data that you have, and going from there. But I would say there's a little bit of an art and a science. I know at Intelligent Demand we sometimes ballpark about $25,000 per one-to-one account, and that's all in. That includes media, that includes creative fees and agency services and things like that. So it's variable, I would say, but looking at some of those benchmarks and then understanding what it costs to reach those audiences is a good place to start.
Awesome. Chris, do you have anything to add there?
I think he crushed it. There's obviously benchmarks based on size of the account list, as James hit on, but it really depends. And I think having an idea of, one-to-one, all in, 25,000, that's a good number to think about, because that's rolling in everything that you would possibly need. And then it helps you to scale down from there and figure out what your tiering looks like.
Absolutely. Cool. Alrighty. Well, that was a rapid fire, pun intended, marshmallow session of those 5 steps. So thank you, Chris and James, for sharing that awesome info. And I hope this was super helpful to those that attended today. I will be sharing the recording in the next few days so that you'll have that. Share it out to your team members. And yeah, good luck with your target account selection. Happy holidays if we don't see you at another event before the end of the year. And with that, yeah, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.